Gaming reviewers love contradictory statements like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a game very similar to other games in its genre, but also is a game like no other. But it's true. Situated neatly in the medieval RPG genre, there are countless examples of games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. So, why did I feel like this game was so unique? I believe the answer lies in its slow paced, down to earth, very realistic approach to world and game design. The game does not stray further from its predecessor as a sequel and stays firmly in the lane of a slow paced, dialogue heavy RPG with a realistic depiction of 15th century Bohemia. Let's talk about what the game is about very briefly. So, the game follows Henry, a peasant boy who proved himself many times in his adventures in the first game, now traveling away from the Rete region where he lived his entire life. The premise is simple. He's traveling as Hans Capone's page and protector, and their goal is to travel to Trotsky Castle to give Otto von Bergow, a noble from the family of Jan Bergow and a member of the League of Lords, a message from the Lords of Lipa who still fight in the name of King Wenceslas IV, now imprisoned by his younger half-brother King Sigismund of Hungary. Playing as Henry of Skelets, a son of a blacksmith with a secret heritage, you find yourself smack dab in the middle of the machinations and games of lords and kings. It is not a place you are accustomed to, like someone like Hans Capone would be, the future lord of Rete. As you travel to Trotsky, to cut it short, you get attacked by bandits, and a very grueling sequence of flashbacks and a pretty clever way to start your character with lower skills happens. So you don't hack and slash groups of bandits with ease like you would with a maxed out character you had in the first game. After, the game begins as it throws you into the world. The starting sequence of the game takes time. It was a bit over 3 hours for me. The game was very considerate in making me remember every major story beat that happened in the first game. Maybe too much so. Although I appreciate how they are trying to make the story comprehensive for someone who never played the first game before. If you have recently played the first game, you might start getting sick of seeing the same few flashbacks over and over again. Although they get the point across on tragedies that haunt Henry's not so distant past. So, the game spits you in a village underneath Trotsky Castle. You have to get to von Bergow and deliver him the message. However, you have lost the message you were carrying. Your everything, a lot of skills and levels, and so on. The game honestly does a great job at making you start rock bottom with no money to your name, no renown, no anything. From there, you are given a single main objective. There is going to be a royal wedding, and von Bergow is most likely to be there. However, there is a problem. You are not invited. So, you have to do something about that. From here, the game throws you in with little guidance. You can go do anything, go anywhere, get killed by bandits on the way to going anywhere. It's all up to you. And I loved it. I decided very early that I would scarcely use the fast travel function and travel everywhere by foot or horseback. At the start, you don't have a horse, so feet it is. This might not be for everyone, but honestly, I found the game beautiful to just walk in. There is no mystical landscape, huge, overbearing mountains, deep valleys, endless horizons. No, just the green, lush Czech nature in its beauty and realism. Nothing exaggerated, and it's great. The game runs great, looks great, and it's not fancy at all in its graphical representation. What you see is what you get, and that philosophy is the same with almost every other aspect of the game. You will find yourself in a place where you will engage with the combat mechanics of the game very soon after starting. While somewhat different from the first game, the combat changes definitely to make it feel and play different. No longer do your dodges need to be time specific, and messing up means you get hacked in the face, in addition to other changes. And while you are starting from scratch, you are still not the blacksmith's boy Henry at the start of the first game who barely knew how to hold a sword in his hand. Even though your injury lowered your abilities, you can still be able to fight somewhat adequately at the start of the game. The first combat encounter for many players, after the opening sequence is done, is the bandits you can find in the forest as you travel to the next village over. They wear heavy armor and they're strong. And I almost want to say the developers put them there to make sure you understand that not considering the consequences of encounters and your moves can very quickly end in your death. Some players save the game here and bash their heads against the wall until they get the bandits and get their sweet loot, or avoid them, or close the game and complain on Reddit. I did the first option, with some experience I had from the first game, and quickly learned that this game would not be as crushingly difficult and unfriendly as the first game seemed to be at times. The combat feels good. I mostly play with a sword, getting a perk so I can one-hand the longsword and hold nothing with my other arm, because why not? Holding a sword with that hand didn't even cross my mind from all the shield bullying I witnessed from the early Dark Souls days. The other weapons are fine. but it does seem that the sword is the main focus of the game, and the other weapons like maces and halberds do not really gain you anything substantial if you decide to use them, while taking away a lot of grace board only the sword has, like the Master Strike, which you can use to decimate armies all by yourself as you max out your sword skills and be a killing machine like no one has ever seen in the Middle Ages. In short, the combat's good, the same old with a new flavor, and while some players think the first game had better balanced combat, I did not enjoy this one any less. Let's talk about the story. Not the main story of the game, but the story Henry will go through as you do 50 hours of side quests rather than go to the wedding. The game is dialogue heavy, so much so that sometimes I just wanted to go and destroy a bandit camp just to cleanse myself from all the dialogue. It is not boring, but it is not for the faint of heart either. You will be given details about Bohemia, lords, peasants, and any small minute detail. When people send you to quests, you ask them where you need to go, and they give you detailed directions every time. While an objective marker appears like any other RPG when the dialogue is over, the directions still feel natural, and you can follow those directions to find the quest without following the map as well, making this small detail add to the flow of the world around you and its immersion. Honestly, there are a lot of small things like that in the dialogue and story that bind you to the world that the game is set in. People tell you about their daily troubles without them leading to quests, hinting you towards potential quests without pointing at them directly. Small things like that. The skill checks are great, sometimes funny, sometimes far-fetched, but they get more unbelievable as they become more difficult and require more levels. The ones you can use to escape cars after you break the law are especially great. Passing the skill check not being a sure thing even if you have higher levels in that skill is great, although with maxed out levels my characters seem to pass them always without fail. So I don't know if you can still fail a check if you're maxed out on that level. With lore, you get as much as you want. You tell a character tell me more and they'll give you a few paragraphs of nice 15th century Bohemian history. It's up to you how much you want to engage in dialogue and how much information you want to be thrown at you. To talk about side quest design, I would say that they are not everyone's cup of tea. Although for people who do side quests like kill 5 boars or follow this person until they reach a certain destination without being seen, the quests this game offers were somewhat of a breath of fresh air for me. So I said to myself as I carried a dozen sacks to the miller's barn for a few groschen. One of the first objectives in the game after the opening synchus is carrying sacks actually. The game does not shy away from breaking a game-like rhythm and makes you do chores and legwork. Follow leads that go nowhere, finish side quests unceremoniously and abruptly, or follow them to the bitter end to find every detail hidden in them. You can finish some quests without ever finding the real answers hidden in them, and just go on your way like you achieved everything you could in that quest. You can kill the opposition, convince them, hide from them, tell the truth, or lie. The number of choices in quests are great, and they shine even brighter with main quests, until they dim with the shadow of the illusion of choice in certain cases. For example, you are held prisoner at a certain point in the story, and you have to find your way out and solve a situation hastily. The game, in that sequence, does not let you draw a weapon even if you find one, and solve things by violence and killing. There are instances in the game where, especially in the main story, the game holds the reins a bit too tightly, and you feel that roller coaster feeling of on-rail sequences as your character gets beaten and finds himself in difficult positions because he's overpowered in a fight in a cutscene. But you know your level 30 Henry can honestly take Sigismund's army by himself if the game would just let you. You feel a certain detachment at points like that. The characters are great and lifelike in many cases. You feel their position in life as they talk, move, act. Nobles act like nobles, peasants act like peasants. The class struggle and issues are always a background to the game, at times where it is directly addressed, and at times where it floats quietly in the backgrounds of scenes and dialogues. You have achieved a lot, probably more than a lot of these nobles, but you're still a commoner, and they make sure you feel that when you are in the presence of nobles and lords. If you push it too much in dialogues, even if you have saved the lives of the people you are talking to, you will be swiftly reminded of your class. The feudal system and its consequences for the people living under it is no contemporary political argument, so I would like to assume, since saying feudalism is bad surely would not be a stance that is argued against in the modern world, though you never know. One thing that the game made me feel was that even though there are many problems in the world we live in today that I would want to see change, it is much better than living as a commoner in the Middle Ages. That's for sure. You will meet great people who will help you in your journey, but mostly you will meet ordinary folk who get by with what they have, ravaged by war and the feuds of the warlords. You will also meet the scum of the earth, and the game will leave you to the choice of what to do with them. The game sometimes will judge your choices, sometimes not. But in most cases, if another character judges you for something that you have done, it feels like that character is judging you, not the developer, which adds to that character and the world around them more than anything. Since you feel that every character has their own moral compass, and believe me, some hard choices await you throughout your journey in this game. The game has a unique flavor of jank, similar to the first game. Although many bugs are humorous more than inhibiting, some annoying stuff happens as well. The bugs seem to gather in certain places in the game. For example, if you have attended a certain tournament, you'll realize that if this game was in as a buggy state as most AAA games releases are nowadays, it would offer a very different, much worse experience. And you can see a glimpse of what that would be like in throughout some sections of the game, like the aforementioned tournament. So, calling it bug free would not be true, but no game is. And even though the game has its fair share, I still did not find anything too bad. Although some fixes towards some stuff, like how the instance where the game warns you if you proceed certain quests that it names would not be able to complete it. Even though if you have seen that warning, even if you do not accept it and back out, the quest it name drops is impossible to complete. Or quest giver markers sometimes still not showing on the map after you complete those quests. Small things like that. Annoying, but nothing too bad. The dialogue cutscenes can be janky in certain cases as well, where characters finish a sentence and a long silence accompanies it, where it becomes funny more than anything. Or some actions that characters do in those dialogues, like drinking, like mimicry more than anything, with that approving head nod characters that every time do when they take a sip of alcohol. However, stuff like this I would include in the unique, amusing jank more than anything. Let's talk about the main story a bit. While I'm not going to get into details, beware of spoilers from this point on. Things happen quickly if you only play the main quest, although dozens of hours of side quests you have taken between main quests do not make the main quest feel disjointed, at least in my case. The game is open about when you should feel free to do side quests, and when a rush of main quests is in order. The story follows espionage, sieges, and bigger set pieces than the first game offered us. The final quest, where you are besieged in a castle, and the slow and maddening process of a siege possesses a certain realism and restraint that I did not witness in any other video game throughout my life playing them. The story does not shy away from boredom, and that makes the big moments feel especially rewarding as a result. The first half of the game and the sequence with the bait and switch at the Nabokov Fortress also made me feel a certain sense of adventure felt while reading a medieval fantasy book in your teens. A true sense of fun and enjoyment felt through the progression of a tale written well. Although that takes a different flavor when it comes to the second section of the game, the Gutenberg region, I still enjoyed the story throughout. And even though it might have its story beats that smell too much of like a video game or a popcorn flick overall, the highs the story had was incredible, and they leave me highly interested in a third game in the series. The world feels amazing in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. The villages are small, the people few, and the effects of war are felt everywhere. After doing quests around these villages, forests, and hills, when you get to Gutenberg, I was simply amazed at the scale and the design of the city. I think the architecture and small details add up to make Gutenberg the best in a medieval RPG I have ever set foot in. The city feels lived in. The small details add incredibly to the city to make it real. When you sit in the shade of the apothecary's front garden, the same feeling of being transformed into that time in the real world strikes me once again. There's a lot to mention in this game. This review could have been many times longer if I was to discuss everything in the game. There are minigames for lockpicking, pickpocketing, blacksmithing, alchemy, and many other things to spend your time in the world. The ones who played the first game will be more or less accustomed to all these mechanics, although they are different in parts to the original. Additionally, the skills and how they interact with your gameplay and how the small gameplay loops of aspects such as alchemy can affect things like your combat abilities, spell checks in dialogues, and many other examples are great additions. Your gameplay and style are yours and yours only. For example, I engaged with blacksmithing and thievery, but never did any alchemy. The game did not feel worse or more difficult as a result, even though alchemy could have been helpful many times in my playthrough. You can do all of them, almost all, or almost none of them. The game does not force your hand, but gently nudges you towards interacting with its mechanics. Honestly, I really don't want to say how many of my playthrough hours were spent throwing dice with strangers in taverns all around the map. The game is beautiful, and it plays beautifully. And even though it is not without its shortcomings, I found it to be an incredible, enjoyable experience similar to the first game. While I clocked 70 hours in the first game with all the DLC played as well, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 took me 110 hours to properly beat and complete, and that's not counting all the DLC that are yet to come out. With some bug fixes and balance to things like armor prices, armor quantity, merchants, and NPC behavior, among other small fixes, the game could be a shining example of what an RPG should be. And even without those fixes and additional content from the developers, it still is one. I would recommend this game to anyone who likes RPGs, but also is not hasty in their gameplay and like a slow paced, well crafted world that they would enjoy spending time in and be patient with. That's why, even if explaining Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is very simple and is very similar to the countless games that came out before it in the same genre, its unique flavor of game design and world building makes it a unique, immersive experience that I wouldn't mind playing a lot more.